As we already know, last week was a great conversation, and the focus of that conversation was unraveling key challenges men face in today's society. Now, as you know, relationships have always been a sticky situation, a sticky concern, right? And you and me, the person, and you guys are vibing, kicking it, enjoying life, and all that other great stuff. And if that relationship don't work out, you part ways, go your separate ways, and it's not such a big deal. However, if there is a child to be considered, now we have a problem. Now we have a concern. And so, what generally happens? This person doesn't show up for the child in the capacity in which I feel that they should, or this person is kind of trying to control what that looks like. It's a whole bunch of confusion that exists around the ever so important concept of children. And so that becomes the sticking point that we're going to address today. And also, that's one of the main reasons why we created the actual Empower and Perspective membership program. Because in the membership program, not only do we tackle these hard issues, but we give you a way to overcome being systematically stuck in that negative thought process so that you can't bring about the necessary change that you want to see in your life. So, if you want to be a part of the Empower and Perspective membership club, if you're on YouTube, look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a join icon. Click that icon and go ahead and follow the instructions and come being part of a community that is destined for change. If you're on some type of cellular device, then you have to go in the show notes and you just read the show notes and you'll come upon where I actually put the link in there for you as well. Now, the focus for this evening conversation is disenfranchised parent, because we understand now it's just not fathers anymore, but the common term, the common idea, the commonality that we've seen for years is disenfranchised fathers. And this amazing topic was brought to our attention by our young brother, Mr. Christopher McClellan. So, what we're going to do is tap into the mind of Chris real quick. And, Chris, what I would like for you to do is kind of share with us why this is such an important topic for you and how you envision this conversation going.
Because this is where I am right now. I am trying to find my other side because I got one side on my life. I need to figure out who I really am, where I come from on the other side. And I need to understand some things. And the only clarification that I can get is from the parent that wasn't there. Because the parent that was there is just going to tell me what she thinks I need to hear to cushion the blow, but I need truth. And I need to be able to formulate what I think about it on my own and then push forward. That's where a lot of us are. A lot of us really want to know where we come from, where the other side is. So I figured this would be a great place to start talking about it.
I like it. I like it. Thank you for sharing that. I think you're absolutely correct. There was something that I had for everybody to read on their own time in the show notes, but somebody took it down. They took it off the internet, right? So I just want to put it out there. It was a white paper written by a doctor, and he spoke specifically about the dangers of disenfranchised fathers and how it has affected our community. But it is what it is. We'll move forward. But I kind of want to lay out some ground rules for this evening's conversation. It's going to be a little different because I think this is such an important topic. As always, we want you guys to put your questions in the chats. We want your comments. We want it all. But I'm going to ask that you focus your comments, your questions, whatever, focus them at me. Right. Allow me to answer your question. Even if it's something one of my brothers say, that's okay. Just ask me the question. I'm going to be the one in the chat tonight because I want these gentlemen to stay focused on the conversation, and I also want to make sure that the conversation flows down the path of the topic of discussion. I do not want to derail this evening's conversation. This is nothing against anybody in the chat and anybody who is listening. This is just the way that I believe we have to move in order to unpack this conversation. So, that being said, the first question that I want to bring to the conversation is, how have societal expectations and cultural norms shaped the role of fathers in family life, and what pressures might lead to feelings of disenfranchisement?
You started off with a body blow. Ooh.
Like Lionel Richie, all night long, baby, all night long.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew.
Well, I think societal norms and cultural norms and societal expectations have kind of shifted over the years, but I think we still move from the premise of a hierarchy system and how people that want to divide and conquer know what they're doing. So, in order to deconstruct the family structure, I think they started with the head. And when they started with the head, they said, okay, how can we, one, turn the family system against the male? Two, how can we make it so that it's harder for the male in society, whether it be prison, whether it be work, whatever it is? How can we place all these things on his back so that we can make it to where the mother depends on us, the children depend on whomever, and the father is in the system or within the system and working for their good. So I think it takes the family structure and nullifies its power.
How have societal expectations and cultural norms shaped the role of fathers in family life? It has diminished it. It has bare bones it. What it has done is turn the father into a check. And the real dependency coming from the same people that they are looking for to save them. They think this is normal. They think this is how it's supposed to be. And that's not it. This is really not it. And feeling like you're not needed is the ultimate feeling of disenfranchisement when it comes to something that you know you should be doing. You're not needed. You've been replaced. What good are you to me? That's the norm I see. And that's from being a product of it and working within it.
I'm I'm a little challenged by this question right here. It's a whole lot, even just the first part of this. So, how have societal expectations and cultural norms shaped the role of fathers? I think if we look at some of the societal expectations, on one hand, we see sometimes from women that I don't need a man, right? And then there's another part of that societal expectation is that men are supposed to provide. And that can also go hand in hand in a lot of cases with a cultural norm. In a lot of cultures, especially culture here, a lot of times men are looked at as they're supposed to be the providers and protectors. And a lot of times it stops there. But that's not what this conversation is about. But with that being said, I think with those societal expectations and those norms, I think what it causes sometimes is for men to try to push sometimes to levels and do certain things that they wouldn't necessarily normally do. So right now, let's just look at it. So a guy, just an average blue collar worker, right? He may not be able to provide the amount of income that society thinks he should make. So let's say society says that men should be making $100,000 a year, and that's what's pumped out there on social media. So that's what's being picked up. So now men can feel inadequate or feel like, hey, I can't do that. So now they're trying to create a family, but it's hard to marry a guy because he only makes $40,000 a year. So now he's not marriage material. So if men are not being looked at in some cases as being marriageable, or being the type of man that you would marry because he doesn't make, six figures and he doesn't meet a certain criteria, then at the end of the day, you can have families because you need mothers and you need fathers in order to have the family. So if the families and the people are not getting married, then it affects the overall family life. And I don't know where I was going. I think I kind of spilled off into something that maybe I shouldn't have. Um, but so I'll pause right there and not get to any of the pressures that might lead to the feelings of disenfranchisement. And maybe I'll come back to it and pick it up later. But I want to hear maybe what Chris has to say. Oh man, he rolling out. Oh, he got to go get that piece. I know what he's gonna do.
All right. He said he was waiting for Chris to say something. I was just making sure I was good. I was in the clear.
So you, Tuame.
Okay. For me, it's simple, before I even say it, there are fathers who are not totally affected, by our cultural norms, right? There are mothers and fathers who are out there making it work, making it happen, right? To God be the glory. But as a whole, as a community as a whole, it has made the father's role obsolete, and it has made the family impossible, right? And this is just kind of piggyback to where Coach kind of went with it, because he went a little bit where I was going with it. Because if we don't have and this can get controversial, right? But I stand on this. If you don't have a father in the home, do you really have a family? Right? Now I'm talking from a whole nother perspective. I think, as they used to say, argue with your mama, don't argue with me about that one.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Because I do hear I do hear a lot of people, mostly women, say that a family starts with them and a kid instead of them and a husband.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's how you start a family. So for me, I stick there. That made the father's role obsolete and the family life impossible. It's that simple for me.
For one, brother Christian, good to see you, man. Always welcome. Good to see you. For one, I appreciate everything that was actually said, and I don't think anybody steered off anywhere, because I think you all are right. Um, I kind of want to start where Brother Gaddy was going just now. He said that the fathers have pretty much been rendered obsolete. I won't say obsolete, but I will say optional. I think society has made it possible for fathers to be an option, but mothers to be a necessity. And to me, um, as I start paying close attention, as I have started paying close attention and observing um, for years and kind of dissecting the scriptures to understand some things, um, it is really tearing our culture apart. I'm just going to be completely transparent. Like, you have children grow up to be very disgruntled adults, and those disgruntled adults start life off with a negative concept, because in their mind they're going to prove everybody wrong that has ever doubted their abilities, or I'm going to prove myself to be better than my father, or whatever that looks like. And that is not only counterproductive, but that is from a negative standpoint, because you have to understand, as a child, you are a perfect mix between both your mother and your father. So when you render one of them an option, and trust me, I understand that some men, they behave in certain ways and they don't necessarily behave like they want to be a part of that child's life. But I will also say that people mature at different rates. And sometimes there are other stories that exist that some children may not necessarily know about. So when you look at societal expectation is that, moms do everything. They do all of this. They can do this. They can handle this, and they handle this, and they handle this, and then they get glorified for being able to do it. But then, by that same token, we don't actually back up and see, well, why didn't the relationship work? And if the relationship didn't work, then it's not just the father who was wrong. Both people were wrong. And until we get to the point that we're completely honest about that, it's always going to be the blame game, that that person was totally wrong. It is that person's fault that we're not together. That is never a true statement. I don't care. I don't care if the other person did 95% and you did 5%. You did something on your 5, right? So I think that's where we have to get to where society have to understand. We have to stop painting the picture that we make the blame game okay. We stop making the blame game a thing that says, oh, well, they did this, right? That's for starters. I've been talking about this for the longest, and I'm going to continue to talk about it because I hate the narrative that fathers provide and protect. Fathers do so much more than that, right? But if you tell me that all I do is provide and protect, then society set the conditions to where you can provide and protect. Then what you're doing is you're setting society has set the conditions to where now that you can step in my role and do what you have taught me that I'm supposed to do, that means that I am an option. So when you look at this question, which I think this question is a very good question, it is one that makes everybody stop and think and consider. Don't respond emotionally, respond logically. Because when you look at logical thinking, then you have to understand that your emotions that prevent the logic from coming forth is based upon some sort of psychosis. That's what the term psychological means. So psychosis prevents logic. So every time there's an emotional response to a logical conversation, it is only because we're ruminating on a thing and we're trying to set the conditions so that everybody can view me as the innocent party and the other person as the villain.
The words protect and provide are starting to turn into buzzwords. And you all know how much I hate buzzwords. I cannot stand them. Like, what does that even mean? Or is that something that you just spitting out of your mouth because you heard it on the internet a trillion times and it's baked in your subconscious? You understand what I'm saying? I hate buzzwords. But that was my tangent. I'm sorry.
And I think you kind of felt it as Coach was talking. Well, at least I did. I think that term was created to put a limit or a capsule on the utility of men. This is all you. This is what you're
Like
worth,
on,
and this is what,
like that's all we can do. Like, is that what
yeah.
you're saying?
That's do that. Now get out my way, because I'm here. Mommy's here. Mommy's here. Now you give me check. All right, lock the doors. Move.
That's what we have been boiled down to. Oh my God,
Mhm.
I hate it here. I hate it here so much.
Well, here's what I'm gonna say.
Where you
I'm
gonna
gonna
go?
I'm gonna twist it up a little
Sorry,
bit
man.
because
I hate it
I,
here, bro.
I think it would be fair to say, and I know, and I'm only saying this because I know that there are women who watch this too, and I know I'm not going to spin down it, but on the other hand, there are some women who say that we do more than cook and clean. You know what I mean? So to that, we understand what it means. We understand that there are more to women than just cooking and cleaning. And I think that there's a huge population of men who, on the other hand, we want to be seen as more than just, well, protectors and providers too. It's a lot more to us. You know what I mean? So just wanted to throw that 2 cents in there.
See, I think that a lot of us have been, because we've been taught by women, we've been around, a lot of us have been around women more than we have our fathers and those role models that should have instilled that positive source of masculine energy, that positive sense of self. So we allowed the same people to teach us through the mothers that wanted to divide us from the mothers, from the women. And I think it was one of my cousins. They had posted something on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of disturbed me because it was a question. Somebody said, "I bet you if you put any man in a woman's shoes for 10 minutes, he would fold," and all this other stuff. And so I didn't come at anybody, but I was like, "I'm not a woman. Why would I want to be in a woman's shoes?" My
Like, why
position
would you even say that nonsense?
and as a man, this is what I have to do. But as long as I'm focusing on what you're not doing, I can't be doing what I'm supposed to do. And that's where we go wrong because I'm focusing on, well, I'm doing this part. I'm doing, well, dang, do your part. If your part calls for more, like in my house, I cook. In my house, I do the laundry. In my house, that's me. Not because that's necessary for my house. I can't sit up there and say, well, you the woman, you need to go in there and cook. Well, you the woman, or she can't say, well, you the man, you need to. No, we have to find out how we work as a family. But as a family, we got to say, man, what direction are we traveling? Because I'm never obsolete. I don't care if we are, like, I hate the term co-parenting because all that does is separate us to where we arguing over who doing what.
That's another
But
one of those dumb terms I don't like. What's a
exactly,
co-parent? You cannot
exactly.
be
I'm a
half a
parent.
parent, stupid.
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So I feel you. But and that's why I think that we have to make sure that we stay cognizant of everything that's going on so we won't fall into those traps just because somebody said it or somebody did it. I don't care what they're doing across the street. This is what I'm doing here. So now I can lead my family from here. And then hopefully it trickles over to whomever else.
I like it. I like it, and I'm with you. Like I would tell you, I use the term co-parenting, and here's why. The only reason I use it because I prefer for two people to get in their mind that they co-parent than to have in their mind that the other parent is just totally absent. So if co-parent have to work, then I'm prefer to do that till they get to the point saying, no, we ain't co nothing. We are working. We are jointly working together as a parenting team,
So it's
right? So
semantics, basically.
semantics at this point, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I take bitter Kool-Aid without no Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just kind of like how I see it right now. Like I think we gotta crawl before we can walk and walk before we can run. And right now we're at the place to where we're face down in the mud. We ain't crawling, we ain't even trying right now. We have this toxic competition that exists between men and women right now to where it is totally exhausting. It is exhausting every time I hear these terms that say, "Oh, we're going to segregate and we're going to promote segregation over here and we're going to promote segregation over here and then we're going to take another term and then this term we're going to add a male or a female to the front side of it because it needs that adjective for that term to be a thing." No, it does not. That term was the term without the adjective that you placed before. And I'm talking about empowerment groups, like women empowerment group. I despise, I hate those, right? Because at the end of the day, what we need to be looking at is joint empowerment groups, groups that actually promote men and women working together. I think that is part of the problem, and we have embraced it and made it an idol in our society.
The competition part is real, and I think that's where a lot of times, well, I would say that's where sometimes it goes astray. You see it even in marriages after a certain time. It's like it's in competition. It's like, look, we're not in competition with anybody, and maybe it's because certain type of men, they have a certain level of confidence, or they know who they are, or whatever, like that. So it's like if you know you can fight, like I don't need to talk, like I don't need to fight you. You know what I mean? I can fight, I can whoop you. So like I don't need to pick at you and press you and stuff like this. But I guess maybe if you feel like you're weaker, that you feel like you have something to prove. But and I don't know if that's what it is in certain cases, but
Yes,
I think
that is what it is. That is what it is. It's about and that's why I listen. Y'all wanted me to include ladies in my statements. Fine. Here's one. Dear ladies, there isn't a man breathing that wants to be in competition with his reflection. What is the matter with you? Get out of the way. Move. Go do what he can't and actually work cohesively with a man instead of trying to find a way to make him unattractive and be better than him. Sit down somewhere. What is wrong with y'all?
yeah, because if you focus on you and being the better you, and not focus on me and better than being the better me, like we're in this together. Like there is no competition with my wife downstairs. Like I got my roles, I do A, B, and C. She do X, Y, and Z, and then together we put our A, B, and C together in X, Y, and Z, and we try to complete the alphabet. You know what I mean? And sometimes she P, and sometimes I'm Q. You know what I mean? However it decides to work out depend on where we are in our life. Like Roland said, where he's at in his life, he's retired. He does X, Y, and Z. In my life, my wife does X, Y, and Z, and I do A, B, and C. but that's totally fine. It's about what works together for your family and what works for you. And I don't know if I just spun us way off, 'cause we supposed to be talking about disenfranchised fathers. So,
But I do feel like we're about to turn this to Jackson 5 and start talking about the ABCs right now.
man, I
You're
told you,
right, for real, for real.
bro, I'm
All right, I'll
ready.
behave. I'll
Uh,
behave. I'm sorry.
Good.
I'm just
but
glad he threw that Q in there because when he said she pee, I'm like, what? Then he said, and I Q you. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, just the
I
letters
was
of the
not in.
alphabet.
Okay.
Yeah, because we got 20 more to get to. You know what I mean? So some of those things I'm gonna have to do, and some of those things she's gonna have to do depend on what we got going on in our life. Not where we are right now. My youngest is 18 right now. But I totally understand, what Chris is talking about. And when you don't have fathers in the house, it can be hard. I look at just my life, if I look been in the military for 20 years, been deployed for a couple of times, multiple deployments, um, been stationed in Korea for a year, all the field problems, all the CQs, all these times we're away. I look back now, and yes, I don't regret those decisions, but I do think that I do have some catching up to do. Not catching up, but there are some things that I missed along the way because I was just gone. When you're gone for 15 months, sometimes really all you are is a paycheck. You can't really do a lot else. You know what I mean? Especially when we was in the stage of crappy phones and all of this stuff like this. Like, we didn't have internet and phone capabilities like we do right now. Like, they could have the capability to shut everything off the way you couldn't even contact anybody back into the States. So I spent a lot of time growing up trying not to be like my father, only to find out as I got older that I wish I would have spent more time trying to learn from him and be like who he was to the core, not his behaviors and his devices that were part of his life. So at my age, I'm 47. My sons are 18, 21, and 28. And I'm trying to play catch up and input certain things into their life that I missed. So I can only imagine how much more they would have lost if my ex-wife would have went and left and try to make it hard for me to not see them and not spend time with them and not be in their life.
I like the fact that you injected that in there as well, because I think that's important. I think, and this is just going back to the whole, societal expectations and norms. I think a lot of times when you look at custodial and non-custodial parents, and give me a second, that's pretty much what the next question is going to be focused on. I think a lot of times you look at custodial and non-custodial parents, we view a thing as like proximity is the most important thing. So the custodial parent gets all the rights. The custodial parents get all of the privileges. And then what you do is you put the non-custodial parent at such a disadvantage and then make it the non-custodial parent not only to take care of that child from a distance, but put forth the energy and effort to spend time with that child without any type of bridge. I will be honest with you, it got, and I can't remember how old I was, but it was probably about 10, maybe about 10, 15, maybe 10, 12 years ago, where I actually seen it with my own eyes, where a custodial parent like bent over backwards to help a non-custodial parent be a part of their child's life. And I think, and at first I was like, what in the world is going on here? But then as I stopped and I started thinking about it, I said, you know what? That's what right looks like. That's the right, because again, the custodial parent's responsibility is to provide the best means for that child to survive, to thrive in life. And you cannot provide that child with that by totally alienating the other parent, by not trying to build a bridge with the other parent, even if the other parent is stubborn, even if the other parent is still in their feelings, even if the other parent is still stuck in the fact that the relationship did not work. It's okay. That child is worth your frustration. That child is worth your pain. That child is worth the efforts that you put forth to build a bridge and make and help that father be a part of that child's life. That child is the one that's most important, not how you feel, not your opinion of that other person. You made the baby, now you have to suffer the consequences. And I'm sorry, let me say it the right way. Y'all made that child, now y'all have to suffer the consequences so that that child has the both of you in his or her life. And I think that's kind of like the segue I want to use to dive into the next question. In what ways might the legal system or institutional practices contribute to the disenfranchisement of fathers, particularly in situations like custody battles or family separation?
Are you serious right now?
I am.
Oh my God. You know what? I said I was
know.
going to behave, so I am going to behave.
Just breathe. Just breathe.
I said this last week. I don't care where you are watching from. Google if your family court is open to the public. If it is open to the public, take a day off, take a pen and a piece of paper, and just sit. And you will see exactly why a lot of the men that you see talking about this are frustrated. And I told this story a while ago. The system as it is right now kind of awards the party, the breadwinning party. You know what I'm saying? That it awards the party that that's not the breadwinner. I'm not going to say it's men or women. I'm going to say if you are the breadwinner, the system is against you because the system is trying to just extract resources from the breadwinner to the non-breadwinner so that way they can spend more money. Like, this is why I don't understand why we are where we are, man. I cannot be the only one smart enough to see how this system is working and knowing that we can't use it anymore. Like, I can't be the only one smart enough to see this. Like, I can't. There has to be other people out there that see this for what it is and are trying to implement ways to stop it. There has to be. I don't think we're that dumb.
Now, not to change it. I agree with you, but you were one of the few who were fortunate enough to see it unfold behind closed doors. That's the part I would inject there. A lot of people are totally ignorant of what that looks like, and they're only looking at it from the perspective of what I can gain.
I also think that people have, when you beat somebody down over a period of time with the same thing, they seem to be hopeless. They don't have any hope of, well, I know I ain't gonna win because they always side with the women or things of that nature. And I think that's where we are as a society because we've seen all too many times where it's the non-custodial parent who has the, or the person who earns the most, or the person who, and parents lean on that and don't work together. And I've been blessed to have my ex where we worked together, where we actually communicated, where the child was actually at the forefront of what's best for the child. What are we going to do about the child? It wasn't about, well, what about you and that old ugly bee and all that other stuff. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about our arguments and how we aren't getting along. It's about how can we help this seed that we brought into the world grow. And that's a plus, but that's not a norm. And we have to make that a norm. We, as those that are most time on the backside of that, we can't get frustrated and just drop it like the scripture says, weeping, about the weeping shall endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You got to endure. We have to endure through the persecution, through the pressures, and all of that, even when it gets tough. That's what I'm looking at it as a man. That's what I got to do. If I got to put it up and eat bologna for a minute so that my child can survive, that's what I got to do. If I got to deal with this other person and it's not necessarily beneficial to my mental, I got to separate my mental and see how I can go about rectifying the situation to where I can maintain a sense of control over my child as well. But I got to endure.
I think we can Google or look up studies and pull data and show how in many cases the legal system, especially in the divorce, is not in the favor of men. It is what it is. That's where we are. When I said something earlier about my ex-wife, and I was fortunate enough that she allowed, I say that word on purpose, allowed me to be to not make things hard. You know what I mean? So I didn't have to deal with the legal system, but I've seen so many dudes that were part of the legal system and got the short end of a stick. I know a guy right now that has one child that's paying almost $2,000 a month for child. Do I have a
That's it.
problem with child support? Absolutely not. I don't have a problem with child support. I have a problem with the system and the way that they use child support and how it affects men. Like, it can be in such um a, a such a negative way, in such an impactful way to their finances and their way of life. Like if you're talking about taking 40% out of anybody's household, you know what I mean, and putting it into another household. And the reality of it is sometimes you may not even have a choice. In many cases, you don't have a choice because at any point, good, bad, or indifferent, if a woman decides that she doesn't want to be married anymore, she can say, all right, well, I'm out. In many cases, the laws, she stands a better chance of getting what she wants and not really receiving a lot of negative or repercussion, because in most cases she's probably going to get the child. She may get some alimony, some child support. She may be able to keep some things in house, yada yada yada. You know what I mean? And now the guy has to take more money and put into it. Like I said, I'm not against child support at all, but I say, guys become disenfranchised fathers and stuff because when they have to deal with the legal system, financially, they may have to work two jobs now to be able to help try to pay some of that child support just so they can provide an adequate apartment or a house, or, because some cases they have to pay for child support and they may have to pay for daycare,
Or they
and then
quit
you
their
ain't able
jobs
to
because they don't
train
want the
some of that
courts
stuff.
taking money out of their pockets.
What's that?
Or they quit their jobs because they don't want the courts taking money away from them. I've
Exactly.
seen that too.
And
So
then in
I don't
some
want to work
cases,
because I'm going to get this money taken out of my paycheck when you can just let me be a dad. And if I do work, I'm going to get money taken out of my paycheck because you won't let me be a dad. You understand what I'm saying? Like, do you see how
yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's why I said I was fortunate that she allowed me, you know what I mean? Because I think in many cases, if the woman decide to make it hard for you, like good, bad, or indifferent, like in some cases, it ain't nothing you can do. Like if she want to make it hard and she got the kid, like what can you really do? So I mean, it's a lot of dudes that's been in those situations, and then now you have the family that's broken up. The kids are seeing certain things. They're going to have a different opinion about certain things as they grow up. And then what's
They
that's going to
turn
do
into
to other
me.
relationships? It affects relationships. It's so many things that can negatively happen from having a bad situation.
But
I
we
know
know,
dudes, it's like, you know what? I don't even really want to have anything to do with my kids anymore because it's like it's so hard. Like I can't never visit them, and like they don't really like me anymore. So they like maybe it's best for me to just stay back, and then when they get of a certain age, just be ready for when they reach back out to me. Like I've heard dudes talk about that before, whether it's right or wrong, but I've heard dudes talk about that before.
yeah. But we gotta admit, I got my coin. It's two sides to every coin. So just like it's bum chicks, it's bum dudes out there who haven't stepped up. So I think the system is set up to protect us. I ain't gonna say women, but
Yeah, it
the
is. It's set up to protect women.
it's set up to protect them. But I think we put ourselves in situations at times where we know the type of person this is. We know her mental capabilities, and we still, because we wanted the little hot box, we jump in instead of protecting ourselves. So I think if we think first and foremost with this one instead of that one, we'll have better results. But because it's all of them not from marriage, some of them are just because, oh, you had a hot feeling and boom, 9 months later you got a kid that you didn't want and don't want to take care of, and now you got to take care of the kid, her, and then her other babies and all this other stuff. So I think we can't just rag on the system when we perpetrate the system, when we are a part of the system, and then it manipulates us, and then we complain about it.
See, but the problem is the manipulation didn't start when you became a parent or a father, or as a lot of women in this generation will put it, a donor, right? Uh, it manipulated you before that because it was already in your mind. and kind of hit to the mindset I always saw growing up, right? We talk about the bum dudes, but most of the dudes that are bums that I know when it comes to fathering, they are because they're like, according to our culture, I'm not supposed to be involved. I'm supposed to be disappeared. I'm supposed to, when she calling me for a pair of shoes, then I show up and then I go back and fade back into the back and live my life because I am not a parent. I'm just a father.
I'm
And
a
that's how
wallet and a break the glass peen when she is in the mood.
a lot of men live there even before they have children because they see it. They see the pain that the guys who fight go through. Growing up, I knew dudes that fought, but every last one of them that fought paid the price. You know me. So most times I saw fathers in a home, they was still not separate. They were still separated, but it's because the mother allowed, you know. And so when our conversations start like that, the mother allowed. It's like, well, dad, you're not a parent. You're an accessory when I want it or need it. When I need help watching these kids because I'm tired, then you're supposed to show up, wait for me to call. And so when we talk about that aspect, because that's a, and don't get me wrong, there are always exceptions to the rules, but that is the normal mindset that a lot of that, at least when I was growing up, that a lot of us were in. That's what we saw. Shoot, Unc brought up, the whole, well, maybe I fade to wait until they grow up. You remember me calling you and telling you I was almost there because I got a wife and kids over here I got to take care of, and you trying to throw me in jail because of lies and stuff because you want the power. And I was just trying to make sure we both were parenting. We both were raising the kids, but you wanted the manipulative power. So you almost got me thrown in jail. You almost got my babies that ain't got nothing to do with you uh taken away.
And that's where we are right now.
I
And
like
so my bad.
no, good. I like the fact that you brought up, you know, the concept of the exception to the rule, because I've seen that we spend too much time talking about the exception to the rule as though the exception is the rule. The exception is not the rule.
The
Uncle
exception
Junior's
proves
situation.
that the rule exists.
Exactly. Uncle Junior's situation where he had the opportunity to be there for his kids that she allowed, that's an exception. What Roland was talking about just now, I like the fact that you said, sure, we got some bum females out there, just like you got some bum dudes, but the system rewards only one type of bum. So the bum dude will always be punished. The bum female, she get to use the system to her advantage. Therefore, when we start talking like that, we're taking the system and saying the system is innocent. It's the man's fault because you're a bum dude. So I'm not that person that's actually going to allow that to go forth because we have to understand the system is the enemy. And every time we take the system and put it between the mother and the father, we're just as guilty as the person who created that system. And we're 10 times more as guilty because the system is not going to have to atone for that child's upbringing. I am. That's the
Yeah.
point that I'm making right now because I
And
think go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
I'm saying, and if you really want to do that, and I hate it when and people hate it when I do this, but if you actually look at the stats, y'all are the most active amongst cultures in family lives. So the whole idea
Big
that
facts.
the
Yes.
whole idea of this is trash. You understand what I'm saying? The whole idea. If no matter where you go, I when I cite my sources, I go to different sources and I mash them up and I do like a overall moving average. If 8 out of 10 men in our community are active in their child's lives, or at least breaking their necks to try to be. You understand what I'm saying? So to even say that, to even bring up deadbeat dads, I don't understand it when there's so many men out there trying to actually fight to be in their kids' lives. But you want to look at the two that's sitting over there twiddling their thumbs and don't want nothing to do with it. You understand what I'm saying? I can't stand that. I really can't. I can't stand that.
I think we beat that whole deadbeat part up because of hurts that we've had and how
It's a
we
buzzword.
I don't even consider it a buzzword because some of us got some ain't shit parents. I'm just gonna say it plain and simple. Like I grew up with come on, that's what I seen every day. That's what I seen in my community. That's what I saw. Like with the men. Now I might have seen some teachers. I might have seen this dude over here, but locally, what I'm looking at. Okay, this dude he hopping and moving, and this dude he's selling dope. He drop off some money, but the regular what you see then turns into you start to see it through the lens of your mother, through the lens of that woman who's hurt, through the lens of that woman who's damaged, through the so you start to see it through their lens and you start thinking, man, everybody ain't nothing. Instead of looking at it like, man, he just has some issues. He not really a ain't whatever dude. He has some issues that he's trying. But we don't see that because it's not pretty. It's not a pretty picture, so we don't even focus on it. But I think that if we stop allowing systems to control us, systems to control whether or not this is my whatever, then I can say I'm doing what I need to do. I'm raising my child to the best of my capabilities for now, and hopefully I can move from this place and move them higher. But just because I'm not doing it to your standard at your level doesn't mean I'm trash. And that's what we focus on. We focus on what other people has told us is trash.
That's the point I was going to get to. As soon as you got finished, I was going to ask a question, right? And I've heard it so many times. We'll talk about these dudes that are out here doing good for themselves. They got a good job. They got a nice car. They're taking care of their kids based upon your understanding because you're not in that situation, nor do you see it all the time. But we'll say all the time that the worst thing you can do to yourself is compare yourself to someone else. But yet you will compare your perception of fatherhood to a person who you believe is a good father, not the one that you actually made the baby with. And then will say, well, the one I made the baby with is a terrible father compared to who? Your father? Your father wasn't that good. He was just your father. That person you're talking about, or you don't even know that person. You just see from your ocular perspective of what he is actually doing, but you don't really know. It's just an observation from a distance. And I think that's another part of the problem. There is a underlining issue to where there are certain people, and I mean, we already know, right? There are certain people, and this is both men and women. We compare ourselves, or someone else compare you as a father to someone else and saying, oh, well, you're not doing what you're supposed to do as a dad, as though you are doing everything you're supposed to do as a mom. So if we stay out of each other's lanes, trying to articulate to the other person what they should be doing and spend more time realizing that it took us to come together to make this child, therefore it's going to take us to come together to raise this child. And I don't have, and again, this is the other part, because proximity is a thing and the child lives in my house. Therefore, I don't have to bend over backwards and do cheetah flips to spend time with them. The child is with me 24/7. And then we're going to talk about raising that child as though it is a job. No, it is an honor. That's for starters. Secondly, it is honorable for both parents to raise the child. So if you really want to talk about how great of a parent you are, build a bridge with that ain't crap parent that you had the baby with, because before you had the baby, you didn't view that person as not being crap. You see what I'm saying? So when you really start dissecting the situation, it ain't all peaches and cream as the story comes out.
So I think what we have to do when we having these conversations, because it's hard to kind of get to the nitty gritty, but the problem is we don't advocate for family in our community. And here's the problem starts when we deal with it as mommy's time and daddy's time. And we don't think, and the problem is we don't think that that's confusing or that's disruptive to that child. And we're comfortable with that for our feelings. Nobody advocates family. We get into this conversation a lot, and nobody says, well, what does it look like to be successful? Or what does a marriage typically look like? Because most times we break up marriages because it don't look like what we wanted it to look like. But most of us don't know what it looked like because most of us don't come from two-parent homes. So based upon how you feel it's supposed to go, is that so nobody's truly out here advocating for the family. And so we get right into the jump of this conversation, because as you was talking to, because I was thinking whenever a man is involved, and it's obvious that he's involved in the parenting of his child, he's a good father, you know. But then on the flip side, we say, but mommy's playing both roles in the home. Like, no, there's just not a father in the home. We got to get out of this mindset of thinking that one party is both parties, and now we have created a substitution for a man in the home, because mommy's being mommy and daddy. And she ain't being husband and wife.
Happy
She,
Father's Day.
yeah, right. You know, so we create this illusion that it doesn't work if mommy's not there, because it's not two, but it works if mommy's there alone. No,
That's
it's just
funny.
not work. It's broken. This is just broken, and we don't speak from that perspective. So you have to get back to the and for me, that's why I look at it like it's broken, because we don't never talk from the perspective of how do we stay a family? How do we how because the first problem is we made a you and I situation a me and the kid situation. No, I'm
No,
get
you're
off my
good.
home.
You're
No,
good. I
I'm
like
glad.
that.
I'm glad. When Roland said Happy Father's Day, I smirked because my friends list on Facebook and Instagram gets smaller and smaller every year, because I delete every woman that comes across my freaking timeline wishing herself Happy Father's Day.
You know
I
what?
don't even want that type of energy in my news feed.
Look, real talk though, Chris. I think I posted this year. I asked the question. So, where are the men who are advocating, the men who are fathers, single fathers, or whatever word you want to use? Where are the men that are advocating to say, "Hey, I'm a mom too"? Where are the men advocating for credit on Mother's Day?
And you probably got a bunch of crickets, because it don't exist. We don't
Yeah,
do
I
stuff
don't think
like
it
that.
exists. And I'm not trying to make it about male and female. I was just flipping to see the other
No, I'm
side of
just
it.
saying,
Right.
like, to post a status like that and a question like that, there had to be crickets, because men don't do that. Dads, fathers don't do that. They just go be fathers. We don't, and to keep it real, a lot of times they don't even want to be celebrated. They just want to be dads.
I just don't want to have to cook on Father's Day.
Right. So here's
It's
the
my
other
day
piece.
off.
Here's the other piece I want to bring to this conversation before we move on as well. Um, Stepdads. Thank God for stepdads. Thank God for a man who raises somebody else's child, but you are not their father. As a stepdad, it is also your responsibility to advocate for the father. Like I used to ask my stepdaughter whenever we would come to South Carolina, are you going to go spend time with your dad? That is an honorable thing to do. It is also honorable to raise another child, another man's child, as your own child, but never make the mistake that you are the father. And mamas, please stop saying, I seen somebody sent me something and it was nerve wracking, to where there was a 16-year-old talking to his mom. She was sitting on the porch and he wanted to know about his dad. And she got upset because he wanted to know about his dad. And she kept saying that, well, and for the sake of conversation, let's just say his name was John. She's like, well, John been a father to you all these years. Why are you asking about your dad? He said, because I need to know about my dad. I'm at the age where there's some things I want to know. Well, John has, John, well, John, no, we got to stop doing it. You're pulling him, or you're pulling that child. I want to say him because it's her as well, especially her. You're pulling the child away from their biological and say you now have a surrogate. Make that one your biological. Can't do it. Shouldn't do it. Go ahead, bro. You're muted.
You're muted.
I've had to deal with that actually because my stepdaughter's father had gotten out of prison after 18 years or so or whatever, and I'd been in her life that whole time. So, but when he got out, he was reaching out. So I tried to pull back. Then I'm like, hey, why you ain't talking to your father? I say you can't blame him for what he did, and you can't take your mother's aggression and all that other stuff. you need a relationship with the other part of you. I was one of those people, I tried to push for that. Like I didn't push too hard, but I'm like, you need that because I know what it's like to not be in the house with your kids. And I'm of the thought, yeah, I'm gonna love those that are around me, period. It's That's what I'm gonna do as a father figure. But I think that if you have another father out there, somebody that's trying to love you, I think that you should actually reach out to try to establish, if nothing else, an understanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dear mothers, get out of the way when this happens. Do not try to coerce your son. Do not try to make him feel bad for doing it. And do not be afraid of him formulating an opinion that isn't favorable to you after he receives the information that he receives from the other party. He needs that information to process. Move.
Chris 316, we love it. So I was asked, brother Chris, Christian, I'm sorry. I was asked, do I feel we answered your question? And my response was, I'm not 100% sure. I know we touched on some things, but I think there's some things we left off the table. So I wanted to bring this up. Brother Barrow wants to know, where does the manipulation start from?
I would
Manipulation.
say one.
Now go ahead,
I,
Ray.
I'll just give one example. I think sometimes manipulation starts when someone's trying to gain control, in whatever situation it is. There's a thought or something that goes in their head. It's like, hey, look, I need to get control of this situation. And it don't always have to be a bad thing. But I think it can start in some cases with the need to have control over something.
Or someone.
Or someone.
The manipulation starts when you play a card and that card don't go your favor, and you got tools at your advantage to make the other party do what you want them to do. So you feel like you're in control of something.
I'll give you a date. July 4th, 1776. Declaration of
I was
Independence.
going to do it.
When America was established, it was established on certain principles. And when those principles were established and they had their amendments and the Constitution and so forth and so on, it placed us in a certain position. And as it placed us in position, it was always a position of where we are inferior. And being inferior, they made rules to control. And when they made these rules, they wrote everything down. When they wrote everything down, it says what you can and can't do, who you can and can't marry. So now, trickle down through these few hundred years, some things have changed, but the system remains the same. So it's a system of controlling who it is that comes in and out of your house, who it is that you are in relation with. And as long as they control our families, it control our narrative.
Roland, I can no longer accept that. And here's why. You just spouted all of those things, which lets you know at a conscious level that something is wrong. You
Yep.
know it. Everybody that's listened to this has heard this already. My problem with this is that we know this already. We are not as weak as everybody tries to portray us to be. We are not. We are truly not. And I am tired of hearing people play this card and downplay us when we are some of the strongest, most resilient people breathing. We know this is wrong. Why hasn't anyone gotten smart enough to say, all right, this is wrong? I just listed out all of these things that contributed to what is wrong. Why can't we gather our resources, because we have them and we know we have them, to fix this?
You just
I
told us.
cannot sit back and just say that we're constantly living in this victim mindset and we are this dumb, because we're
You're right.
not.
So you're absolutely right. You just gave us the answer. So Roland is telling us where it began. You told us a few seconds ago why it still exists, because People are using the system to manipulate other people. They want to be in control. They want to accept another person's resources and not work hard for them. That's their means of getting ahead in life. So, actually, what both of you are saying are absolutely right. He is right. That's where it began. But what you said before we got into this is also right, because even though people know it, they don't want to change it, because when they change it, it evens out the playing field.
I think it's gonna change real quick though, because
But people,
you're starting to see more women pay alimony because they're out earning men and outpacing men. You're starting to
but
see it.
that's
It's gonna
still under
change.
the same system. See, what needs to change is I'm with you where we have to have a collective resources, but we don't do that because we don't trust one another. We trust other people. Master's ice is colder than ice, and we still have that mentality as a collective. And it's a few of us that think outside the box, like, man, let's do this and let's do that. But then the majority gonna say, I'm comfortable because people don't like being uncomfortable. People don't like having uncomfortable conversations. People don't like those things. And that's why they say, well, it ain't bothering me. Yeah, you ain't got the kids in your house, but what about your neighbors? What about the people across the street? They need this. But we say, nope, I'm comfortable living in my house. I'm not in the projects. I'm not on Section 8. So I will leave it alone. That's what we do as the masses.
I want to add to what you're saying, because this is the part that gets under my skin. You actually have, and I'm gonna say it, I'm sorry, y'all get mad at me later. We actually have people who stand in the pulpit and they will pander this behavior without actually saying the right thing, right? Putting forth the right information that brings the family together as a unit, but they will tell you to utilize the system. They will tell you to get ahead or get over on another person, as opposed to focusing on the family coming together and reshaping the mindset according to what the scriptures actually say. Why? Hmm, I'm not going to get into that one on here. However, there's a reason for that as well. Um, so yeah, Christian brother, as always, man, we appreciate your questions, man, and I hope we at least scratched the surface of it and gave you some more insight to that question, because that is a powerful question for a young man to ask. And again, I want to make sure I'm saying it. There are some people who don't know. They're totally oblivious to the conversation that we're having, because they don't find themselves in those social circles to have those conversations. They stay on the conversations like you've seen them on TikTok, and those conversations exacerbate the problem and continue to make it worse. So kudos to you, young brother, for asking that question. Moving along, because we're a little over an hour right now. The next question that we're going to bring to the conversation is, how do the feelings of disconnect or disenfranchisement, which simply means taking something away from a person that is rightfully theirs, disenfranchisement, impact a father's relationship with his child, spouse, or partner? And what ripple effects might this have on the family unit?
So I'll jump out there first, just to get it started. So the feeling of disconnect or disenfranchisement, and I'm gonna speak from actively dealing, right? Um, the feeling in and of itself can sometimes turn into the feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of uselessness, um, a lot of feelings. I can go down a laundry list, right? That I'm not going to spend too much time doing. Uh, but it can sometimes cause the father in that to deal with a level of depression that kind of causes him to draw back from the family and from the kids, because at some point the kids start to look like the problem to him too. When he see the kids, he sees the manipulation, he sees the drama, he sees, and that begins to tear away at the child, because when the child does get excited to see daddy, and daddy's drained, or daddy is burnt out with the situation and not necessarily with them, then they kind of sometimes, the child can often feel like it's either their fault why it's not working with daddy, or they feel like daddy just don't care about them, and mommy's right has been all along. If mommy's been one of those who's, oh, your daddy ain't this, your daddy ain't that, so when you get when we deal with this, it affects every aspect. It affects, yes, and it definitely affects your household as well, because if you're remarried, it's a toll on your spouse to watch you go through this fight or to go through the fight with you, because it affects them too. It's an attack on them as well. It's attack on the house you building with them. So it become a stressor. And there's some, not saying all, right, and I don't even know what's the percentage, but it can often cause some women who are married to men going through this to have a resentment for those children. And now those kids are not comfortable going to daddy's house because Miss Miss so and so or Auntie so, some people make them call them auntie or whatever. So and so don't like them. So when we just got to be careful with this, because it affects everything attached to that man, and it always leads back to that child. We do these things and we don't realize every as it affects the partner, as it affects the home, as it affects the income, as it affects the father, it comes back to that child 100% of the time.
I like what you said, and I want to add too, but I want to stick to the partner situation, as said individual in this question right here. As they move forward, let's say for this situation, it's the guy, you know what I mean? He's moving forward, and now he's dealing with, like you said, the ex-wife and the children from the previous relationship, right? So now the new woman in the situation, if stuff is not good, I mean, that can potentially hinder his ability to, get a certain type of woman that he may like, or even maintain a healthy relationship with someone, because there's all of this negative energy and stuff that's going on with the ex-wife or the ex-girlfriend and the children, and the situation is going on. So like you said, now the new wife or the new partner has to somewhat deal with that, and that can be challenging for the new partner. And sometimes people may not want to take on that role, because I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard on TV when, when people are talking about, who they want to be with, and they say, well, I'm okay with dating somebody with kids. However, they can't have a bad baby mama, or they got to have a relationship with their child or something like that. So this can definitely affect the future relationships that you have with people going forward. And that's definitely one of the ripple effects that it can have on not only your family, but your children's family, and what they see and what they observe. Like, you think I got kids. So my kids not only saw me with my ex-wife, like my oldest son is 28. I was married to my ex-wife for 19 years, and I've been with my current wife together for about 8 or 9 years, somewhere around. I'll do the math later on, so I won't get in trouble. But anyway, with that being said, my kids saw me with my ex-wife for a lot of the time, but they also saw me with my new wife. So they're going to be able to take experiences and different things that they saw in that life and this life, and it may be some negative things that come with that. Like my son, one of my sons already said, I ain't never getting married. Or, he talked about, it's going to be a long time before I get married. And that may be because of the fact that I've been married first. And then, like someone else said, is that I don't know if I honestly, taking some accountability right now, I don't know if I did enough, growing up, talking about family and how important family is. You know what I'm saying? Just to be honest, I don't know if that was like, mine was like, hey, do right in school, do the right thing, and get up and do your homework. You know what I mean? I don't know if, me teaching family was something that was really at the forefront of my conversation that I've had with my children, just to be honest. And, so when someone said that, it made me think a little bit, and I know I'm gonna think about it more, once the show goes over and into the future. I can't go back and change the past, but it is something that I can do a better job of going forward.
I'll just bottom line it. The men stop. They just stop. I am not going to fight with you anymore. I'm not going to fight with you to be a dad. I'm not going to fight with you to do the things that I am supposed to do as a man. You are putting up way too many walls for me to do this one thing that you need me to do, whether you want to believe it or not. I'll tell you a quick story. Had a friend of mine, married, 3 beautiful kids, all by the same dad. Lovely. She did it right. She left him because she wasn't happy. And she decided to say that she can do everything by herself and she don't need him. And it festered in him and it festered in him until he just said, "All right, prove it." And he stopped. That could be something that happens. That could be a ripple of the a ripple that can flow through the whole family unit. He stopped because I kept telling him that I didn't need him. And now I need him. You understand what I'm saying? I see that a lot too.
Man, I think I was probably in my 20s with 3, maybe 4 kids before I had a positive, what I considered a positive example of what a marriage looked like, of somebody to try to teach me what a man should do, a husband should do. I was already had a bunch of kids. I already had a wife, and I'm just trying to figure this thing out. And that's one of the problems because we go through life where we don't have these examples. So the feelings that we have is like we disconnect, we shut down. Like Chris was saying, we back off. We just okay, this is gonna happen anyway. So do whatever it is that you're gonna do, and we just, it's almost like okay, we give up on our families at times because we think that that would be best. And I think sometimes it's selfish because for me, I think it was a selfish feeling because I think I didn't want the hurt. I didn't want the pressures. I didn't want the arguing. I didn't want those things. So it was easier for me to just back off and say, whatever, just take this check and do what you're gonna do. And then being in the army, hey, I'm in the field, I'm deployed, what you need, here you go. And as long as I didn't have to actually face those things, it was easier for me. So it impacted me mentally where I would think, man, if I would just, this is me, I would literally think if I were to die, if I were to die by even my own hands, they would get this check. They would be better off. That's what I would think. And sometimes that's the dark places that we go because of the situations that we found ourselves in and not knowing how to deal with those pressures.
I
But
believe
can
you worded that wrong. And here's why I'm going to say that. You said you gave up on your family. Sounds to me like you tried, but there were obstacles put in your way that prevented you to do it, so you just stopped trying. That's not giving up. That's you putting forth the effort to do what you're supposed to do and things being in your way that were insurmountable at the time. That is what I am saying. Yes, there are dudes that just walk out. You understand what I'm saying? But there are other dudes that I'm telling you, man. And this is I'm passionate about it because I've seen it firsthand. There are dudes breaking their necks for this, and they just decide one day this is costing me too much money, and the money that I'm wasting on here, I could have been spending with my child if she wasn't so hard headed. And they just stop.
which is the question I was actually about to ask you, because as being someone remarried while my kids are still growing up, sometimes I feel like me fighting for my 2 kids and putting my other 3 kids and my wife in jeopardy is selfish, because it has almost gotten my baby, her 2 daughters, while they were infants, almost got snatched away due to pretty much as a casualty of war, right?
Sometimes
And
the only winning move is not to play.
As frustrating as I know that sounds, as disingenuous as I know that sounds, I gotta agree. You have to look at it like this. If you have and so listen to Roland talk just now. He sounded like everything you said, bro. It sounded just like me. Like I literally had those exact same thoughts. I literally was that frustrated. Like when you guys started talking in the beginning, like when this happens, you feel like a failure. You feel like you failed at life. That's really what it feels like. You failed at life. You feel like a failure as a father. You feel like a failure as a man. Like you have lost. Not only have you lost your spouse, but you've also lost your legacy. You know what I'm saying? And then even though the relationship does not work, you're still trying to do your part as a father. And you guys know my story. I was paying child support and still flying. And I'm catching flights, I'm booking hotels, I'm getting rental cars. So every time I'm traveling, it's a $1,500 bill on top of the child support I had to pay anyway. And at a certain point, it became taxing. And oh yeah, I can throw in the house because remember I told you guys that I left her with the house that she was supposed to refinance after 6 months, and 3 years later she still had it. And then she decided she was going to start paying the mortgage late. So not only we're fighting about this thing, but we're fighting about this thing, and then it's like all these different things that she is leveraging against me simply because I am trying to do the right thing. Not one finger was ever lifted to say, hey, this. So it also looks like this because I know we like to say, well, I never stopped him from seeing or spending time with their kids. But let me ask the dumb question. Did you empower him? Did you empower your kids to reach out to him? I used to get phone calls like, hey, did you call your son today? I'm sorry. Not only am I older than you, but I didn't come out your birth canal. You're talking to the wrong person. How about ask your son, did he call his father today? I just walked in the house from work. So you see what I'm saying? Like all of this stuff on top of everything else that you're doing becomes mentally taxing. And oh yeah, by the way, this is post deployment era, high levels of PTSD. By the way, not gonna lie or deny that aspect. So now you're looking at the consistency of thoughts compounded with other thoughts, and that sometimes during the equation your most healthy choice is called peace. And I think sometimes what most people believe that you should do is forego peace for the hell that somebody else puts you through, simply because they have this thing they call custodial guardianship. And I think that's ridiculous. And so at some point, we have to come to the table, and both of us must be adult, not demand the man to be an adult, but both of us must be an adult and say, you know what? Um, I think when it comes down to it, sure, we can get child support through the system, but why don't we work together? And if we work together, then you can be a full functioning part of the family, even though you and I are not a family anymore, but we still have the one that connects us as a family. And then we both can spend time with the child together. That way, the child feels that they have a healthy, cohesive parenting unit, which is exactly how it should be. So when Roland, you articulated what you just said, bro, I was right there with you. Everything you said, I felt it. Not just in that conversation, I experienced it myself. I actually had a conversation with myself in my house by myself. If I wasn't here, everybody else would be better off. It's that bad.
See, that's why I didn't like the fact that you called it giving up, because it sounds like you, Coach, Tuame, y'all fought. There's nothing wrong with fighting. There's nothing wrong with doing what you need to do or what you're supposed to do within the system to be a part of your child's life. But if the odds are insurmountable, I can fully understand why a man would completely stop and go on about his life. I get it. I'm not condoning it, but I'm also not condemning it. I understand.
And and this has to happen. Like we need people who are not affected by these conditions to stop speaking And I say that because I don't know why it's funny. Just yesterday, I saw about 3 people on my timeline make statements. I don't understand how fathers can be deadbeats. Like, why are we only making fathers deadbeats? Right? You can be in the house and be a deadbeat by denying that child of 2 parents is a deadbeat. Like, but the conversation comes from the aspect of, well, it's just easy. It's just if you love your child, it's just be there. But that's not always the case. So when people speak from their vantage point because it's going good for you, at that moment it's going good for you, it's sometimes not the best moment to speak for those who it ain't going good for. And so we create the conversation from a narrative that everyone who had to stop is deadbeat, and you deem them all as ain't dudes, right? Instead of, hey, why is this a thing? I think Chris brought it up earlier. I agree with Roland's synopsis of where it started, but I also agree with Chris. Now that we've recognized it, that it's a thing, why is it a thing? How do we
Since we're
stop
the
making
most
it a thing?
educated, shut up.
Come on.
Because, man, this makes me sick. And this is why I'm always angry. You cannot know what I know and see the things that you see and not be angry at some of the stupidity that people think is normal. This is stupidity, but this is
I got some
normal in our
stupidity for
community for
you.
some reason. Go
I got
ahead,
some
Uncle.
stupidity, and it may be real. So I definitely related to some of the other things I heard, and I actually wrote down this, and this is truly what I experienced, and I have verbalized it so many times. I was willing to sacrifice my entire relationship with my sons so they could have one with their mom. I was totally willing to do that, no matter what. If it mean that I was the bad guy, if they looked at me like a POS or whatever, I was like, you know what, I'll do that because I want them to have a relationship with at least one of their parents. So if they wasn't going to have it with me, at least have a good one with your mom. So I tried my best, and I didn't do a lot of bashing her and being negative toward her or anything. As they got a little older, they asked certain things, and I kind of cleaned it up for them and threw it back at them. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, that's their mom. You know what I mean? Just because it didn't work out with me, it ain't my job to expose her for everything that she did. Just like it ain't her job to expose me for everything I did or didn't do. You know what I mean? Certain things that happened in our relationship was just between us. And everybody don't need to know, good, bad, or indifferent, So I don't necessarily feel the need to tell my kids everything, but but what can happen, back to this question, some of the ripple effects is that, your kids can look at you. Well, a ripple effect could be you on one hand be willing to sacrifice your relationship with your child just for the sake of your the other person or even your child at the end of the day, So because, by the time I got divorced, it was okay as far as how things went, but we had already broken up 2 or 3 times and split up and got back together in between all of those times. So it wasn't always peaches and cream for me. When we split up, like it was bad. You know what I'm saying? So, and we was in different states. I was in the army, so it was rough. I didn't get to see my kids, you know, and it wasn't like, I mean, I think we didn't even have Skype yet the first time we split up. So it wasn't a whole bunch of communication.
See, I think a lot of that communication that we aren't privy to, we hear about later. Because when my daughters moved in with me when they were in high school, I hear conversations that their mother was having concerning me. And they felt some type of way when I'm like, hold up, no, this is what's going on. I had conversations. You're in high school. We can talk now. And I had to talk to them. And now they had a disdain in them for their mother. And I had to check that. Because as a father, I don't care what your mama doing, that's your mama, you're gonna respect her. So you never will disrespect your mother in my presence. I don't care what she's doing to herself, what demon she's got, whatever. You're not gonna disrespect her. Now, how she treats me, hey, let her do what she does because she's doing it from a hurt place. And but that's your mother. That's my ex, and it's my ex for a reason. So, and that was one of my exes. So, now my second one, we didn't have that, and I don't have to say it because she be on here. Matter of fact, she on here now. But I don't have to say it to clean it up. But we didn't have those problems because it was always okay, let's facilitate what's best for the child. But the children hear things, they know things, they hear those conversations when you talking to your cousin, your auntie, your friend, and you talking about, yeah, girl, he was doing this, that, and other. And it'll come out because they'll tend to have a lack of respect for the father and what he tends to bring to this relationship or this family dynamic.
I love it. I love it. Shout out to MJ. Always a pleasure to see you on the platform. Always welcome to come through. And as well as everybody else, again, as you can see, this is one of those very difficult and much needed conversations in our community. That's what it's all about. It's all about strengthening our community and getting better as we progress forward. This brings us to, as always, our bittersweet moment. And we're just gonna kind of go around the horn. We ain't gonna do nothing. We're not gonna do nothing formal tonight. Just gonna open mic. Whoever wants to go ahead and give their final thoughts. We're not gonna even do a cameo. Just straight from the platform like this. So, gentlemen, just chime in and give your final thoughts as you feel.
I'll spark it. Fine. My final thought is simple. We live in a society where behaviors are being championed and behaviors are being cancel worthy. So, in order for us to circumvent that, the only winning move is not to play. Dear men, be very, very careful with your seeds. Very careful. You carry the spark of life. That woman cannot create anything until you put a seed in her to grow. It is on us now. We must be responsible. To all of my fellas out there who are products of single mom homes and are looking to go have the conversation with the disenfranchised father, go see him. Go see him and go get his response and be objective about it, because he may say some things that does not paint your mom in the best light. And a lot of the things that he may tell you may actually contradict a lot of the things your mama told you, and vice versa. So you have to be open minded and you have to give both of them a little bit of grace because they are going by what they knew and what they were taught. That's my final thought.
I'll go next. I'll roll with mine. I think it's important for men to do whatever they need to do to make sure that they have life set up in a place for when something like this happens. If you ever find yourself feeling like you're in a disenfranchised father, I think the better you are, I guess what I want to say is it is, life is full of ups and downs and roller coasters and stuff like that. And in many, as you look at this panel, there have been at least 4 marriages up in here, and there's been at least 4 divorces. There's 5 people up in here. There's a high percentage chance, even if you just looking at this data right here, that you may end up in a situation and you may feel like at some point that you're a disenfranchised father. So what I would say is try to build yourself up, not necessarily brace for it or look for it, but just try to do what you can if you're a younger type of guy to just kind of um, build a certain type of foundation that will help you, self-care, resources, different things like that. So when and if something like this comes up, you have more of a cushion and the fall may not be as hard. Still rough, because the thing that coach said, 100% the same thing. It'd be a whole lot easier on everybody if I wasn't here. Because you know what? If I roll out, 450 bands at the time automatically go. So That's the reality of it. But like I said, do what you can, take care of yourself, self-care and all those things, because when and if life hits you, it's a lot better when you have some cushion or something to fall back on, or you've kind of sort of not prepared for it, but kind of prepared for it.
Yeah, 600 now, 500 regular, then 100 extra for 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 gratuity. But yeah, it was simple until it was time to talk, because this is a conversation that is really hard to streamline, right? But I'll start here. I say this: a lot of our women were misinformed. It is not a flex to raise children without one or the other parent. Just like it ain't a flex for a man to raise kids without a mother, it ain't a flex for a mother to raise a child without a man. And there are cases, of course, your spouse passed away or something like that, and you had to take up the mantle. I get that, but for us to move as a community as if it's a flex for one of us to make the other one obsolete, it's absolutely not. It takes strength for us to be able to stand together, because relationships are hard. One thing, I've spoken to a lot of married folks, a lot of old married folks too. The one thing I've never heard is that it was ever easy. And so the flex is to be able to have the strength to endure the hardships of our relationship and create the beautiful thing that you can create in this world, and that's children and a family. Not just children, but a family. This is, you go look at most commercials. The best commercials sometimes end with a family on the beach, a family taking a walk, a family in the park. The greatest thing we can create is a family. And as we teach, when it comes to money, when it comes to business, comes to anything, is anything worth having, is worth fighting for. But we quit on families so easily. It's not a flex. Stop. The only way we raise healthy children or a healthy community is if we reinstate the idea of our family. The fact that one or the other is disenfranchised, it becomes sad. It's a sad, if one person has to be disenfranchised so the other one can have it easy, we have failed, and we have to put it back together. We have to be able to maintain and keep our heads up and fight so that we can stand strong together. We only seem defeated, and we only can still go back to the victim mindset because we have allowed ourselves to be divided. Right? Old mantra we used to say a long time ago: united we stand, divided we fall. Well, why do we prefer division? That's my final take.
Man, that was on Good Times. But uh, I think first and foremost, if we're talking to men, before you think you can become a good father, a good man and a good father are the same thing. I don't think you can separate it. If you are a good man, you can be a good father. May not be a perfect in somebody else's eyes father, but that doesn't matter about somebody else's eyes. I think first and foremost, learn what it is to be yourself. Learn you, be yourself, and cultivate that person to where he is understanding. He is a thinker. He knows what his role is in life, and not just in some woman's life. So I think that for me, I'm a family person. I don't like the term, oh, I got all these friends and people be friending. No, I have friends that become family. Well, I know you for a minute and making you cool, but after that, your family. Where if your family has a need, my family has a need, so we got to make it happen. The other day, we were talking to Uncle Junior's son, and I'm looking at him. Oh, that's my nephew. No relation, but I have relation with his father. His father has a concern, so it's a concern of mine. So we have to look at one another as family first and foremost. That's why I don't know any N words or any B's and all these terms that we call ourselves. Because when I look at you, I look at me, I look at my children, I look at my mother, I look at my father, I look at you as family. So as a father, first and foremost, I'm trying to see how can I be a better man so that I can affect people in a fatherly role. And if I can do that to the best of my capabilities and continue to grow where I can learn and do better, then I can affect more people and we can do what Chris was talking about. We can take over that system and say, forget the system. Let's do what needs to be done for us. And that's my final word.
I love it. I'm gonna start right there. I say let's take over the system right now as we learn. You don't have to wait, right? Just let's build this airplane in flight while we're in flight. That's what I say we do. Stop choosing the easy wrong. That's for starters. This is where I want to go as we're starting to close this out. We exist in a space in a time where we have superimposed the word love with like. Love is not like. And because we believe that the word like equates to love, what we do is we play the popularity contest when it comes down to parenting. And so, because I want to be the most popular parent, I want all of the kudos for everything that I do. I want to be the center of attention. And I'm just going to render the other person as being obsolete because when my child does good, it's all because of me. Me, and me. I'm, and I pray that anybody who has listened to this, I'm not talking to you, but that person I just described should have never had a child because you are too self-centered to focus on the child. That's why the father can't get in and be a father. Well, good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't really matter. When you focus all of the attention on yourself, and if you are in that space right now, and if there is a person who hears this and have a parent, I ask you to go look in the mirror and take a real strong self-assessment because it's required. That child needs the best version of you, and you focusing on what you want and how you can be glorified is not it. Next, that ain't your child anyway. I don't care who you are, man or woman. That ain't your child. You're just responsible for that child until that child becomes an adult. That child belongs to the Lord. And how dare you not put forth your best effort to raise what belongs to Him? That's where I want to go with it right there. You walk around here acting like the child is your slave. You own that child. And you bragging about all you've done for that child. Me, and me. Come on, man. What are we doing? We really need to take a step back, wake up, and as they used to say back in the day, smell the roses. Because we got to recognize we have done so many things wrong. We are just, we're begging, we're needing grace. We're needing mercy. And I don't think anybody's exempt from that. Nobody's perfect. We got that part, but that's an excuse that we say to make ourselves feel good for the decisions that we made. So we need to stop doing that. Go back, make the child the center of attention, build a bridge with the other parent. Tell the other parent how much you need them for the sake of the child. If you ain't trying to rekindle nothing, I'm good with that. Don't even make sure that that's all addressed up front, but make sure that everybody focuses on the child. Get the people out your business. And people don't mean you, they never did mean you any good. The best interest of a child, that's a lie straight from the pits of hell. They meant that from day one. They meant to lie to you because they know you were buying to it. Why? Because they always wanted you to look at them as your savior. That's why. That's the raw, honest truth. And everything that you have elected to be your savior over the savior is called the idol. And that's a whole nother conversation to go down. So I'm just going to leave it there. And you know what? This conversation needed to be that heavy. It really did. So that being said, man, listen, I want to say this in closing. We appreciate every last one of you. We value you. We love you. Again, like I said before, if you're on YouTube, look at the top of the screen. I left you guys a gift, something that you can use for the rest of the week going forward, and be intentional about it. I'm going to try to do that more frequently. I know I kind of got out of the habit of it, but I want to get back into doing it. So that being said, man, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Don't forget tomorrow morning, 10:30. We'll see you then. So that being said, have a great rest of your evening. I'll see you tomorrow. And then from there, you have a phenomenal weekend.